Welcome to another edition of the e-commerce report. Hi, Steve.
Hey man,
Um,
good to be here.
good. I've seen some very interesting developments there with Flexport and Convoy. That story is just going on and on. Flexport has now confirmed that it's buying Convoy's tech assets. Now, Flexport has clarified that actually it's not the company. A lot of people assume that it's just the assets. Now, that's very interesting because you know that Convoy said that the reason why they couldn't find an investor was due to the freight recession, and obviously also partly to blame for their demise. Now, I spoke to a senior president, as vice president at Circle Logistics in the US, Andrew Smith, about this. And he says that actually there is no such thing as a freight recession. He says, yes, next year there will be huge problems, but for now, there is no really a freight recession that everybody's talking about. The volumes are still there and the rates have come down. But let's just quickly listen to a few things that he said that shippers must be thinking about right now. And then I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure.
What does a carrier base look like of their partners? There's a lot of fraud going on in the industry. So how are your partners combating that fraud? What are they doing to prevent that fraud? We at Circle, we've done a lot of things. We've built a fraud prevention team. We've brought in some new analytics, some new data, some third-party companies that we're working with, and we relatively have it under control. But it was a very large, monumental task for us to achieve, and it required a lot of investment in a lot of different places. And when you have a decline in market, bad actors or actors that aren't held to the laws of the United States or don't care about them, they commit crimes. And a lot of that's taking place. I think that when insurance renewals come around for brokers and trucking companies over the next 2 months, you're going to see carrier exits accelerate because the premiums are going to go up way more than what we've ever seen due to a lot of the fraud and cargo theft. So that's number two I would be looking at is what is the quality of the carriers your brokers are using and their financial viability.
Steve, your thoughts? What do you think of this?
Yeah, look, I think what's happening in different parts of the world have different impacts. But I think certainly, I don't necessarily think there is a freight recession as such. I think during the COVID period, we saw a huge increase in volume. Now we're seeing some normalization of volume that's actually occurring. And so I think that's what, some companies will be seeing a decrease in volume, but that's just, it's because we had this massive spike during the COVID period, and then we've now come back to the normality. Freight volumes will continue to keep on growing over the years to come. People are still buying online. The number of people that are continuing to buy and more people buy online is increasing every single year. And I think that's primarily driven by people being used to buying online, but also this younger generation that's now getting older and older and have grown up being able to buy online and using things like TikTok to find out the latest trends and latest products to buy and all those types of things.
Yeah. I see that Uber Freight also just put out a statement in the last 24 hours. Now, they're saying that the freight industry is actually at a tipping point. But the reason why they say this, and I think this is such an interesting point, is because of the fuel prices increasing. Do you also see some problems with that? We obviously know with the conflicts, in other countries, in Ukraine. Would that still have a huge impact, the fuel prices?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's necessarily fuel prices. From a delivery point of view, most courier companies, not all, but most have a surcharge, and that surcharge is a variable surcharge based on the cost of the fuel. What I think we're seeing at the moment is we're seeing some consolidation in the market, and you've had a number of players who had access to large amounts of capital, like Flexport, like Convoy, and many others. And now suddenly the availability of new funding for those businesses has been reduced dramatically. And so suddenly these businesses, which were operating on, probably very low margin, or in some instances, no margin, or giving away almost that delivery, they're having to turn their business to become profitable. And some don't have the ability to do it fast enough. Like in the instance with Convoy, they had a huge overhead. They had a number of trailers that they'd acquired and were leasing on a monthly basis during the COVID period. The volumes dropped off. Suddenly, they still had that expense, and so it was very challenging for them to turn that business around. And so I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think we're going to continue to see some consolidation. across many of these businesses, particularly towards this end of this year and going into next year, where the ability to raise capital is more challenging than what it was. And I think the periods where it was really easy to acquire that sort of capital and raise that capital, they're no longer here, and you need to be running a business that is moving towards profitability or is profitability. And definitely at a transaction level, when you're doing each of these transactions, you're making money.
Yeah. A very interesting story that I want to touch on now is Sing Post is expected to buy Australia's Border Express for $210 million in a bid to widen logistics presence in Australia. Now, this is a huge, because Border Express runs a network of about 16 facilities and a fleet of over 700 vehicles. What will this mean for Australia?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. So for those that don't know, like Singapore Post, you think of it just being operating in Singapore, not in Australia. Actually, they've got a very large presence already in Australia. They're the owners of Couriers Please. They also own EFM Logistics, which is a large freight broker here in Australia, processes large amounts of volume throughout the Australian network and using a range of carriers, but probably one of their larger carriers, or is now one of their larger carriers, would be Couriers Please. The Border Express acquisition, I think, makes a lot of sense for their business. It allows them to get access to the customers of Border Express. They're going to have the ability now to consolidate that business, and there's going to be areas where they're going to be able to pull out some costs inside of that business. They're not going to need to run, the large accounts team across all of their companies. They're probably going to be able to consolidate their warehousing. Their model is, a different model to Couriers Please, but their model allows them to actually have large amounts of volume going into a warehouse, and then it's being delivered from there out to their customers. And so that's a different model to Couriers Please, but it works very, very nicely inside of the Couriers Please network, which operates right across Australia. So I think it's very smart. I think what we're seeing, now, and with reduction in availability of capital, some of these larger players have been able to pick up these companies at a discounted price. Not saying that they managed to buy Border Express at a discounted price. I'd say they definitely paid a lot of money for that business. And so I think in years ahead, will that mean that they've actually purchased at a good price or not? Time will tell. But definitely, makes a lot of sense in terms of their strategy in consolidating the market.
Yeah. How will this positively impact the logistics industry or even just small businesses?
Yeah, look, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, it does mean that it creates additional capacity potentially inside of that Couriers Please network. Maybe it'll be interesting to see, how this is going to play out over the coming, months and years ahead. It'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah. Any concerns or red flags here that people, companies should be monitored?
Look, I think, Border Express was a reasonable sized player in the market. They were definitely targeting a lot of businesses who had large amounts of volume, large amounts of orders. They're sending their stock into their warehouses and then distributing from there. It's reducing the number of players in this market. So it does reduce the number of options that customers will have, particularly small business and large businesses. And so, that's not necessarily a great thing, but there may be some really positive benefits of being able to have this consolidated network across. And so, I think time will tell as to what happens. But now there's becoming a smaller number of large carriers that can facilitate delivery, particularly in the Australian market. But I think this consolidation play is going to continue to happen at a global basis.
Yeah. Something that's very inspiring is Amazon. They've now nearly tripled their profit to $9.9 billion. Now that's up from $2.9 billion in the previous year. This is just fascinating because, this is the current economic climate that all companies are operating under, but yet they managed to do all of this, not double, triple their revenue. That is just astonishing. What do you think of this?
Yeah, look, I think, there's a number of reasons as to why this has happened, but ultimately, Amazon has done a great job in building a really successful e-commerce business, but then they've gone down and built out this really great technology in being able to their Amazon Web Services business. They've done that extremely well. But when you look at Amazon's website, and this is, I think, the thing that every e-commerce business should aspire to be doing, is it's thinking about how do you tell the consumer the point of checkout or when you're going to buy, when that product is going to arrive. They do that extremely well. You can see here, free delivery. On Friday, it's going to arrive on Monday. It's a really great customer experience. And I think every e-commerce business needs to look at this and go, okay, I need to do this, but actually I need to do this better if I'm going to compete inside of the Amazon business. And, there's one little bit of text here. There's a lot of moving parts behind their business that makes this actually operate. But this, I think, is one of the key reasons for their success in how they've been able to get to where they've got to today. And also, obviously the technology infrastructure that's sitting behind their business. It's really interesting.
Something that not a lot of people might know, actually, but it takes obviously a lot of effort to get to this point. It's a painful process as well. I saw an interview that one of the executives did, just yesterday, saying that, sometimes it's bold statements that you also have to make. You need to cut away certain things and say the logistics part, the bold steps that you have to take to make sure that you get to this point. We only say this point. I mean, it's tough decisions that you have to make as a company. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Amazon, went through a lot of pain to get to here. A lot of people didn't believe in what they were spending their money in terms of losing a lot of money in the early days and building out their delivery infrastructure and building out the warehouse infrastructure that they've now got, going off into a separate business in terms of technology and selling that technology to other customers. And so, this has been 20 years in the making to get to this point. And I think it's a lot of businesses can learn from what they've been able to achieve.
Yeah. So, Steve, it's peak season and Walmart has now released its plan for this festive season. They are going to focus on faster deliveries this time. So now they have their on-demand delivery slot for same-day delivery. So this means that holiday customers can choose between express delivery for 30 minutes later. Then they have their parcel. But they also have this night option. They call it the late night delivery service, which will then allow customers to make their orders about 10:30 at night. And that will be applicable to 4,000 of their stores. What kind of delivery options do you think that businesses must start implementing now, this time of the year, to make sure that they get all the wider audience?
Yeah, I think, the key thing is giving your customers choice on when that product is going to arrive. Not just being able to say, hey, it's going to be on this particular day, being able to say, here's all the different options that actually are available to choose to have that product actually delivered is critical. And so what Walmart's been doing, and they've been doing this for some time, is they've been thinking about how do we give choice to our customers. Time windows is a really great way of being able to do that. So a lot of businesses think about, okay, well, I want to deliver product to customers faster. I'm just going to offer a 1 hour delivery. But in fact, it's actually better to do it in terms of time windows. Time windows allows you to consolidate orders into those time windows, which allows you to be more efficient. It's more efficient in terms of the pick and pack process, but it's also more efficient in terms of drivers being able to go to that one location, pick up multiple parcels, which reduces your cost of delivery. And then, the customer knows that product's actually going to arrive during that time period. Walmart's been working on this strategy, I think, for a while now. They've got a service called Spark, which is their Spark driver network, very similar to like an Amazon Flex environment where drivers can pick up the time when they want to do those deliveries. Very flexible, which means allowing them to have multiple time windows available throughout the day, and whether that's during the beginning of the day or towards the end of the day, or probably over the weekend as well. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of retailers need to look at what Walmart's doing, look at what Amazon is doing, and think about how can they leverage their own internal footprint of retail stores to be able to make this delivery faster, but also consolidation centers and having consolidated warehouses, which is going to allow them to actually deliver those products directly to their customers without going through a third party.
Yeah. I know Walmart will also have then 7 automated market fulfillment centers up and running just before Thanksgiving. What do you think of this?
Yeah, this is exactly what they should be doing. They're taking product probably from their stores, they're consolidating that into a single warehouse in a particular area, which probably is covering multiple of their retail stores. The parcels are going to get sorted. They're going to get sorted into driver runs. The drivers will be able to turn up there, pick up their 50 parcels, 80 parcels to be delivered. They'll have route optimization, allowing the drivers to actually deliver them in a particular route, which will mean they'll be able to give their customers a live tracking experience to be able to track the live location of that driver arriving. And so that makes a lot of sense in terms of what they're doing. And so, yeah, we're seeing that, a lot of businesses that we speak to are thinking about how they can actually implement this type of technology inside of their business.
Yeah. So let's keep with the Christmas theme. We know that as a business, you're going to be sending a lot of your parcels to customers, and it's so important just to get it right. There's a huge expectation, and to make sure that the packaging is done correctly, that extra service is done correctly. Now, something that's in the spotlight is Every. It's also a delivery company in the UK, and they've just, in the last 2 weeks, they've dropped the ball, really. Let's quickly look at the first photo that I want to show you, Steve. This is a parcel in the countryside. We're going to get it up now. This is a photo of a parcel that was dropped off there at that spot. It is literally next to the highway, and this was shared on social media. That is concerning. And then there's another photo that I want you to look at. This one is going to be up on the screen. This one is just showing how that box is damaged. There was actually swayed in, and the customer complained, and she actually said that she tried to take it up, but nobody was answering. She couldn't actually get to the people to complain and say, what is happening here? So let's just talk first about the first one, rural deliveries. It's so important that people get it right. There's no specific address. It's not the same as delivering a parcel in the suburbs, for instance.
Yeah.
Should there be training? Why is it so tricky? Why is it so difficult?
Look, I mean, I think, ultimately when you're delivering parcels, having parcels delivered, things go wrong, and drivers do stuff that you never expect them to actually do. And that's just the nature of delivery. And I don't think it's, fair to single out any particular logistics business, because this happens across the board. I think the key thing here is thinking about how do you prevent this from actually happening, and making sure that, you can reduce that as much as possible. And if the customer's had a bad experience, how do you actually understand whether, they are a happy customer or whether they're not a happy customer? And I think that's the critical thing. One of the things that we do a lot about is trying to capture that live review on the completion of a delivery, and using, whether it's in our Locate to You business where customers use this to capture that experience, or in Zoom to You, it's knowing and capturing this information the minute that delivery is actually completed is really important. Because if you know that the customer's unhappy, it means that you can fix it. And also it allows you to identify, okay, for this particular order, it's linked to this particular driver. This driver is consistently poorly doing things in a poor way. They need some education, or maybe they need to be moved on and not be inside doing these deliveries in the future. But without that bit of data, it makes it very, very difficult. And I encourage all logistics businesses to really think about how do they capture that information from their customers to know whether they've had a good or bad experience. And this will allow you to improve and consistently be better, and make sure that you've got quality drivers on side of your network.
Yeah. And how do you make sure that the address that the driver's got is the same as what the person actually gave? And how do you understand if the person know exactly where to drop it off? There was another case where a driver, it's Australia Post, where a driver dropped it off at a farm, and the woman had to look for her parcel, in an 800 acres farm, and she found it finally in a tree. I mean, How do you avoid? I mean, these are bizarre cases, but I mean, how do you get it right?
I think a lot of this can come down to how to use technology to solve these things. Simple things like the driver having to take a photo on completion of that shipment makes a huge difference, because the customer can actually see that information. I mean, the other thing is, if it's not taking the photograph, on the completion of when they press the button to actually complete the delivery, they can actually capture a GPS coordinate. And so then the exact location of where that driver is at that point in time. And so that becomes very, very useful for businesses to be able to know and look at that and go back, okay, this hasn't been delivered. Let me go back and be able to look at our system to see exactly the location of where this parcel's being delivered. So I think there's a range of different things that the businesses can do, but ultimately it's come down to using the right technology systems to allow you to do that.
Absolutely. That's interesting. I mean, technology can solve so many of our problems. Thanks again, Steve, for a wonderful show. Any last remarks?
No, look, it's, we're heading into that busy period now. So I think every e-commerce and retailer will be counting down the weeks to Christmas, and thinking about, making sure they're ready to handle the volume that's going to occur over the coming weeks as we go into Christmas. And so, yeah, it's going to be a busy few weeks, a busy couple months ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Then we'll see you next time. Same time, same place.
Thanks, Mia.